Chris and Dan show. You're hearing from Dan first because Chris has been dominating this video channel lately with him washing his Corvette and doing other random things. But today, thank you for that, Chris. Today, we've got Murthy on. He's the founder of NitroBrew. We're going to have the link underneath. This is something that my wife got me for Christmas. And if you're a coffee drinker, particularly cold brew, like, the coffee lover's rabbit hole goes very deep, and you're going to want foam. You're going to want a nitro foam top. Chris, you get that? Are you going to want this?
Nitro foam top.
Yes.
That's the best part?
You know how, like, when you drink beer, you have that foam head?
I do.
Well, you can get that from coffee. Matter of fact, even from this Nitro Brew, you can do it with beer too.
So just way off on a tangent since you already kind of going there.
Chris will buy this, Murthy. This podcast will be worth your time because Chris will buy this before the
possibly.
show's over.
So
We'd love to sell you one, Chris.
I'm not a big coffee fan, but I've started drinking coffee about 6 months ago. I had never enjoyed the flavor of coffee.
Really?
Yeah, it's just, I don't know, too strong, too potent for me. Same thing with beer. I don't like beer at all. So the foam part of beer is just nasty. It's like, well, if I'm going to drink beer, I may as well get an effect from it, right? And the foam's just minimal. So why do I want to taste this nastiness, right? But coffee I've started enjoying as of late. So the foam I actually might like. I had a Starbucks for the first time like 2 weeks ago, and I like the foam on that. So
For the first time? What did you order at Starbucks?
I don't know. Something with some foam. It was a latte of some sort.
Wait, you ordered Starbucks for the first time in your life?
Yeah.
This is like the podcast that is worth having. This? What do you mean? Are you human?
I think so. Last
This
time I
is
checked.
unreal. A Starbucks.
Doctor doesn't question me on my humanness.
Oh my God. Well, we got to get you into this Nitro Brew because it's amazing. Murthy, thank you for creating this product. You get this cool compressor. You get the glasses, the Nitro Brew glasses. You guys will see it here as we're talking. I'm going to have it on randomly. It's very simple. You get the little container. You put your cold brew in it. I like to mix mine with water. You'll watch me do it. And then you insert it into the Nitro Brew adapter. Boom. It will automatically turn off around 45 PSI. And then you turn off the compressor. You shake the thing until it turns cold. You start feeling it turn cold. That's just chemistry in action, folks. And then you flip it upside down, pour it in your cup. Comes out nice, creamy, foamy. I love it. I love it. And thank you so much for creating this product. Chris, you've got to try it, man. You have to try this. And it works for beer, too. I actually tried it with some beer. It's kind of cool. I just messed around and tried it with beer. And it apparently works with other things, too, no?
Oh, yeah. Tea is actually one of my favorites besides coffee. It's simple black tea on Nitro. It's pretty awesome.
Wow. It has to be cold, though, right? Like iced tea.
Well, it doesn't have to be cold, but the risk here is we don't want people spraying themselves with, scalding beverage.
Yeah.
But it's, traditionally it's always been with cold beverages.
Yeah.
When the beverage is cold, it has more capacity to hold the gas. The gas is more soluble. And yeah, that's kind of how nitro style beverages have traditionally been done.
Chris, you will become a fan, man. I know. Have you tried that Black Rifle coffee we got you?
No, we've just finished the tour of the world. So
how was that? Good?
It was really good. It was
really good.
Okay. Yeah, I never know what to get my mom. I'm thinking I'll probably get her that next year for
So
Christmas.
after drinking that, I'm curious, would you switch back to Folgers?
If I have no other option, sure.
But you do
switch back permanently.
permanent.
What I mean is, like, if we have some, because I think we still have like 3 cans of this stuff, or 3 of the red buckets that you get from Costco.
Yeah.
It hasn't been used for quite some time, but if desperation ensued, sure, Folgers would come out.
But you've
Gotta
you've
have
graduated.
caffeine.
You've graduated beyond that. Like your tastes have evolved a little since.
Well, yeah, so now I know why I've always thought coffee was so gross, because that was the only thing I had exposure to was Folgers and McDonald's. McDonald's is pretty bad too, in my opinion. Well, at least the
Yeah.
last time I had it, which was like 35 years ago.
Wow, 35 years ago, McDonald's, and then just recently Starbucks for the first time. Amazing, Chris Huber breaking records. You will love this Nitro Brew, man. Murthy, what made you want to create this? Like what I'm assuming you're a coffee lover or just a nitro foam lover.
All thing Nitro, my background is actually from the beer industry.
Ah,
And, the brewers have been trying to do a Nitro style beer for, I don't know, back in the 70s, even in the late, maybe not quite 70s, but, in the 80s anyway. Guinness was one of the first ones to do it.
Ugh,
yeah, my
Guinness
favorite. My
Nitro
The wor-
Stout.
the worst.
My favorite.
It's the crema, Chris, you're looking for, a nice, fresh Guinness. And it is different whether you
No, I
whether you
promise you
get
I'm
it in
not.
Dublin or, a well-cooked version of it, maybe on some rail car sitting in Arizona for, I don't know, however long. That's a different matter.
So,
But
this should tell you how that's definitely not true of me. My favorite beer is light beer because it has the least amount of beer taste. So there you go.
This will
Well,
work with that. I tried it with some Michelob Ultra, just because that's the one I had from a party in my fridge. Came out the can, put it in this Nitro Brew, did the thing. It came out foamy, like a bartender served it to me. Amazing. It turned like a stale beer, like an old beer just sitting in the fridge for months, into like something a bartender would serve me. Amazing. In like a minute.
yeah, it does a pretty nice show in the glass. And but you're right, though. To be fair, the beer also has to have some body, and nice malt character will help. What kind of malt? You want that,
Mm-hmm.
the chocolatey, malty character.
Yeah.
And of course, there's all kinds of beers out there with, various kind of hops, and it's gone.
So is the proprietary product like the box, like the Nitro Brew box that attaches to the compressor, or
No, the whole thing. The
the whole
charger is
thing?
basically, the charger is basically a way to provide gas in a convenient way. Even though, we encourage, and, as you use the air compressor option, believe it or not, you can literally connect a nitrogen cylinder to it, pipe it up with nitrogen, and you can do with nitrogen. You can
Wow.
connect with,
You mean
yeah,
like
you can connect CO2.
one of those bad
Yeah,
boys right there?
exactly. Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah. What is that? Is that a CO2 cylinder
it's
or
CO2.
nitrogen?
We're in the clinic, so we
Ah,
use it for dry ice. We make dry ice.
oh, nice. You know what? You can use, that's probably drawing liquid out of the tank, but you can get a regular CO2 cylinder and make craft sodas with exactly the same setup.
Hmm.
Wow. With the
So
Nitro
that's a
Brew.
different story, but yeah, you can make craft sodas with whatever you are,
So you can make
and it's,
old fashioned root beer.
yep. And
Very
root
nice.
beer is pretty fantastic on nitro. It's like root beer float. And I have a friend here
I bet.
who
That's why I
who
said
can
root beer.
drop it. Yeah, you can lay a penny on it and it'll float.
Wow.
He calls that root beer float, by the way.
There you go.
But
Well, now we're selling
yeah,
Chris. Now we're talking to Chris.
there you go, Chris.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Might have to get one of these
Our
new
beer is actually
cartridges.
really nice on Nitro, as you may have guessed.
What can you tell a little bit about your background? You said you came from the beer industry. Can you kind of give us, it's not just every day somebody invents a product and starts selling it. Like what, can you give us like a little bit of your background?
Yeah, so I was in the corporate brewing world for many years. I used to work at Miller in the R&D, and there was always an interest in making a nice nitro beer. And I happened to do a project for a company called Line and Kugel at the time. I don't know if you are aware. It's a nice craft brewer out of Wisconsin. Miller had an interest in it at the time, and they used to make a beer, which they still do, I believe, called the Liney's Red,
Hmm.
which is a red ale. Very nice beer. And we made a process to put nitrogen into it. And it was a fantastic process, but it's for producing kegs of that beer.
Mhm.
Um, Same beer, you can sell it standard carbonated way like they have always done, or a nitro style of it. Um, and it was locally distributed. It was a great beer. So my involvement with nitro stuff happened at that time, and I developed a process for making that happen for them at the time.
Wow. How many
Miller,
years were you working with
oh,
Miller?
it was a long time ago. It was back in the 90s,
Wow.
actually early 90s.
So you were with Miller and you
Um,
said in the R&D department, research and
yeah.
development?
Mhm.
Interesting. What kind of things do they research? Like, is it just different processes for holding
Oh, all
beer? Or...
kinds of stuff. Um, there were several departments in the R&D. There was, of course, the traditional brewing stuff, uh, brewing process engineering, where you're talking about building breweries and getting new technologies and stuff. There was a lot of fundamental research that folks at Miller did. Like a lot of hop chemistry that we know today has come out of the flavor, foam, and hop chemistry department over
Hmm.
there. Um, there was a group of yeast physiology and fermentation scientists, which I was part of also.
Wow.
Um,
Are you a
that had done a
scientist
lot.
by background?
Yeah, yeah. I'm a biochemical engineering, chemical engineering background guy.
No shit, that's amazing. Biochem
Yeah,
engineer.
yeah. So I
That's
was a
really
bit
cool.
all over the place there. But, you know, later on, I was doing and I was called a research engineer or a senior research engineer. We would, evaluate new technologies and develop new technologies and bring it to our manufacturing facilities, the breweries.
Mm.
So I was involved in a lot of things: fermentation, research, beer processing, packaging. How to
Wow.
keep the beer fresh.
What's one of the
Uh,
biggest, what's one of the most shocking things about the beer industry that regular people don't know that if they knew, they would say, wow.
Well, I don't know. One thing that when you buy a can of beer, no matter from who, uh, a lot of work went into it. A lot of people have done, worked pretty diligently with a lot of effort in creating that thing. Now there is always the market forces that you gotta, compete. There is this marketing. Somebody wants to, just hydrate,
Mhm.
drink a Bud Light when you're, mowing the lawn. We don't have lawns here, thankfully, but
Throw a transgender in the can and call it a day.
yeah, no, it's there's a beer for that occasion, and there's a beer for when you want to hang out, at Christmas with friends and you want to have
Yeah.
this special beer. So there's something for everybody. And but across the board, breweries are much bigger facilities than, let's say, a soda facility. You know, you're not just blending some flavors and, sugar and water, and maybe not sugar depending on what it is. It's There's a whole lot of real estate for a brewing process that maybe a lot of people don't realize. In the old days, a lot of brewers even did their own malting,
Wow.
right?
So it's a lot of work to go into that can. So the
A
next
lot
time
of
I'm
work goes.
drinking and my wife tells me, rolls her eyes, I'm gonna say, you know what? As I crack it, a lot of work went into this can. A lot of PhDs. We must respect to this can right now. Gonna use that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Chris, what do you think about all this as a beer drinker yourself?
Yeah, I'm not impressed. Not impressed.
Not
Never-
impressed with the what? With the beer?
Yeah. I've yet to drink
Yeah.
a beer I'm impressed with.
Oh, so you're just not a beer guy, like
Oh
pretty
man.
much.
Beer and
Well,
coffee were both on my like bottom of the list things to drink. Up until recently, in terms of coffee, things have changed, but most of my life that is not the case.
I think with coffee we're
So-
drinking the wrong one, and I think with beer it's similar.
No, I've tried
Probably.
plenty of beer. Some of it is just flat, what's it called? Fat tire. That's like disgusting. How anybody likes that stuff? I do not
Fat
get it.
tire. What do you
It
think,
ta-
Murthy? What do
It
you
tastes
think?
like wait. Fat tire to me tastes like coffee that's 4 days old combined with beer.
Sounds attractive.
Yeah, it's awful.
What do you think, Murthy, when you hear something like this as somebody from the industry, since the 90s?
A lot of craft brewers, right? Do you try any, like craft beers? I guess Fat Tire was a craft beer. Maybe some people still consider it, but do you go out and drink in a brew pub anytime?
Sure, like we'll go out on Dan and I sometimes we'll go out on business lunches or whatnot, and they only serve beer in terms of adult beverages. So it's like I asked Dan, hey, what's more like light beer of these craft beers they're offering? And so Dan will order me one, and yeah, I mean it's fine. It's not that it's if it's not that strong of flavor, I can down it, but it's not something I would choose or say I enjoy. There's not a beer I've ever like truly enjoyed.
What is it that turns you off in beer?
The bitterness, and same thing with coffee. I don't like bitter.
But there's a lot of beers that are not bitter.
I know they all have at least some of it. Even the light beers, it's just lesser. Like barely. What would be the word? Not audible, but the same thing for taste, right? You can barely taste it, but it's there. At least in my, perceptible.
Yeah, there's some really wild beers out there. I mean, have you tried any of these Belgian style beers?
Yeah, the orange ones, and yeah,
Shock top.
Oranges. Well, I don't want to make you into a beer drinker if you don't want to.
No. If I go to a bar, I generally speaking, I order a hard liquor. I like the girl drinks. They taste good. The girl drinks, right? Give me a blackberry margarita. There we go.
Oh yeah, Chris.
That's my
Just
speed.
made an espresso martini.
Yeah, awesome. There we go.
Well, there you go.
There you go. Can you put that in the
Now we're
Nitro Brew
talking.
too? You could put that in the brew, probably come out
Yes, sir.
There you go.
A
good.
kick-butt drink.
Yep.
Have you tried it, Dan? Or have you tried it, Chris?
No, I haven't tried it, but that sounds good.
Nitro espresso martini? No.
No,
sounds good.
I've never tried a hard liquor with as nitro anything actually.
Yeah, you should try it. It's pretty awesome.
Don't give me ideas, man. I might just start experimenting on myself here.
There you go. You love doing that.
I do. Yeah. Marty, what gave you the idea to start the business, and like when did you start this business? The business is called Nitro Brew. Is that the name?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, before most people realized it could be something, 2014 is when we had started the business, NitroBrew.
Wow.
Um, and
Congrats.
we actually own the federal trademark for NitroBrew. So,
Wow.
you know, Google thinks we are the authority on nitro drinks, but um, yeah,
It's
so
it's definitely a great product. I don't know how
yeah,
my wife finds them, but it's amazing, and happy to be a advocate and let all of our viewers know about it. Um, how's the business doing well?
very well. By the way, I want to put in a word for your wife. You
Oh,
should be a very grateful husband.
thank you, thank you. Yeah,
You
I
know,
know when she
yeah.
looks into something, she goes all in.
Thank her for the business from our side.
I will, and she's definitely gonna watch this. She watched the last one Chris did, about women that go to the gym, which she found interesting. Uh, uh,
So yeah, I mean, to answer your question, there is a parent company called Quantiperm, which has been in business since, I don't know, 23 years now, and we make beverage production equipment, and that's the origin. And some of these technologies, like I said, we were always interested in putting nitrogen into the beer. And there's some other challenges, when you want to package and distribute a beer with nitrogen, or for that matter, as most people are finding out, even with any beverage on nitrogen, it's very difficult. It doesn't travel well,
mm,
you know, because the number one, it requires high pressures, and number two, um, anytime it's exquisitely sensitive to temperature. So during distribution, even a momentary change, warm up in temperature will cause all that nitrogen to come out of the beverage and sit in the headspace. And to get it back into the beverage is a daunting task again. So number one, you cannot package a can at a high enough pressure that we think is required to get a good nitrogen dissolution level. And number two, it's very finicky. Even once you got it, any number of places it can get messed up. So, having tried it in a brewery production side, we've always felt that what we had at the brewery wasn't quite what we could get when we went to a bar,
Distribution.
where they carried this beer. And I mean, how often have you had a flat beer when you are thinking, you ordered a nitro or something,
mm-hmm. A lot, way
you know,
too often.
a lot. So that's an experience we didn't want to repeat. And the basic idea or the argument for starting Nitro Brew is that nitro style drinks are done best at point of service. So we want to infuse nitrogen into that beverage when somebody is ready to drink it. So that's kind of how, the kettle system that we were talking about that you got is our first product in
Wow,
that run.
amazing. That was your first like consumer, so you were in the
Yeah.
B2B space for quite some time, and this
Mhm.
is your first venture into the B2C
Correct.
world. Wow,
It
awesome.
wasn't really, we weren't really restricting this to be a purely home use device. A lot of coffee shops and small brewers have these.
Ah,
Even Coke and Pepsi and you name it have these for their R&D recipe development work.
wow, really?
And a lot of our competition has it too. It's a good way to prepare, for lack of a better word, like a reference standard that you can check other things against. So yeah, it's a simple device. You know, um, gets you close to 45 or maybe
Hmm.
60 ppm. I don't remember the amount of nitrogen. Guinness Stout probably has about 40 ppm. Some of our
Yeah.
other devices can put a lot more nitrogen on it. You can adjust it, of course, to how you want it, but
A lot more
yeah.
head. Yeah. The chemistry of this stuff is fascinating. Like it got me thinking about. I mean, humans are amazingly capable of inventing things, and whoever figured out this chemistry, uh, I mean, they must have been playing around with gases or something. Because what is like if we could nerd out a little bit, what is so special about NO2 and NO, especially when it comes to beverages that, like from a chemical level, like what is it that makes this so important, I guess?
So one correction, when people use the word nitro beverage, right? We are only talking about N2, the nitrogen gas that we breathe, in air, which is like 80% of air is nitrogen. NO2 is nitric oxide, or nitric oxide, nitrous
Nitric, yeah.
oxide, various oxides of nitrogen. There are different ones. The nitric NO2 is actually a very bad gas, toxic gas, acidic. Um, that's when people talk about NOx emissions in combustion systems, that's the one, and that's the bad one you don't want. Nitrous oxide, as you probably know, is N2O, which is the anesthetic.
Great for
Um,
cars.
Laughing gas.
that's yeah, that's
And
right.
great
And
for cars too.
great, yeah, and there's a food grade version. The problem is the ones they sell for the cars is not made with as stringent a process, because NO2 is a byproduct that can come along, and that's very toxic.
Hmm.
So for anesthesia gases, they will use N2O. Now, which is also the laughing gas, which is also the gas they use for making whipping cream.
Hmm.
The little.
Yeah.
And by the way,
So
you
I
can
was
use NitroBrew with N2O and another plugin.
I
Uh,
I kind of knew that about the whipping cream, especially the kind that's canned.
uh-huh.
My very first job was at Dairy Queen,
Ah,
and I wasn't into drugs, never even seen drugs. But the owners came in one day, and every case of canned whipping cream they had was unusable because they said all the gas was gone, that people were inhaling it. So you just explained why. I had no clue why. To this day, I had no clue why. This happened when I was 15. So yeah, laughing gas, huh?
yeah, yeah.
Interesting.
I don't know a lot about it, but I know that I think it shrinks your vocal cords, so like kind of like helium. It makes your voice turn a very high pitch, and it's funny. Or I don't know,
But there is
but
some sort of a high factor, right? Because that's what the owners said at
yeah,
the time. Whoever's doing this, quit getting high off of my product. Gonna make me go
yeah,
broke or something like that. Everybody was there, and he was chewing out whoever was doing it.
yeah. Well, apparently it was a public health situation in the UK.
Yeah.
They have these nitrous oxide cartridges strewn around everywhere. At least
Wow.
that's what I read somewhere.
So when we're
But
talking
yeah,
about
you can.
like
Mhm.
from the Nitro Brew, we're talking about N2, just strictly N2.
Strictly into the nitrogen gas that we use,
Gotcha.
that we breathe.
Gotcha.
But you can use CO2 if you want to make sodas. You can use N2O if you want to make N2O. Nitrous oxide has a very high solubility. Somewhere like, I don't remember, but somewhere halfway between carbon dioxide and nitrogen.
Hmm.
So carbon dioxide is like 50 times more soluble than nitrogen, you know. So, and nitrous oxide is somewhere like, I want to say maybe 15 or 20, I don't remember. So it does have a lot of solubility, and it dissolves very well in fats, you know. So like whipping cream, um, it does dissolve, and when you dispense it, it it airs out and expands, and you get whipping cream. With
Interesting.
NitroBrew, you can also just use air and make whipping cream. I don't know. You should try it sometime. Dan.
Just like so
Yeah,
switch the tank from the compressor and
you don't have to switch anything. Just the way you have it, you know, with air. Pour some whipping cream in your kettle.
oh, wow.
Yeah, like whole cream, and you can add some flavoring if you like.
Oh,
And
really? Okay.
yeah, charge it. You can even charge it with carbon dioxide, and it'll give you, you know, like that tart foam, which is pretty interesting.
Really? How would I
For
do that?
you
How
know,
would I get the CO2?
oh yeah, you know, at the back of the charger, there's a little port, right, where
Yeah.
the air compressor connects.
Yeah.
Just disconnect that and connect carbon dioxide
Oh,
from a
okay.
cylinder.
No kidding.
Yeah,
Wow. There's so much we can do. This is
Dan's going to be
yeah,
experimenting, I see.
we might blow up the house. So
yeah. Don't put liquid, but you know the
duly noted.
CO2 gas bottle that you get from a brewery supply store.
Wow. This is interesting. I like making dry ice here with this. So you think with the CO2, this is the liquid CO, this is the CO2 for siphon. It has a siphon in it.
Yeah, yeah. You
Uh,
don't want the siphon. You want to get the gas from
hmm,
above the liquid in the container in that bottle.
I see. So just take
Yeah,
out the where the charger's connected to the compressor, take it out, connect it to the
to the
CO2.
CO2 cylinder. Yeah,
Interesting.
and make sure your pressure doesn't exceed 45 psi, like you know,
And then cool stuff
like
will
with
happen.
air or anything else. Yeah,
Wow.
you
All
can
right.
turn the pressure down to to get a lower carbonation level.
Hmm.
But if you want to really, have that
Interesting.
really brisk soda, you can leave it at 45. And
There's an industrial place right by here. They give you all kinds of gases. So
yeah,
the guy knows me already from buying the CO2. So go in
yeah,
there and get all kinds of gases, mess around with it. I wonder who
yeah.
we might blow up the house for real. I wonder who discovered this stuff. Like, I mean, N2, for example. Like, to me, it's fascinating how people must have had to get seriously hurt to like figure out these things.
That's actually a good question because humans, for the most part, um, determined what to eat according to what animals would eat. So somebody, a few cave people or whatnot tried grass, right? Because all these animals are eating grass. And so that's pretty nasty. It upsets my stomach not eating that, right? So what animal worked with this stuff that that our ancestors saw, right? I mean, where'd they come up with this idea?
Well, some animals, and this is my theory, and I may not be, right, but I think it makes sense. Um, Going back to brewing animals again, you know, in the old days, people used to brew beer in all kinds of leaky equipment. They would put in wooden barrels. It's coming back in a big way now with these craft, oak barrels and specially aged barrels and
Yep.
all
Same
that.
thing
But
with hard liquor, whiskeys and things.
yeah, right. So they used to store beer in these barrels, and they were open to atmosphere. They just had a wooden bung on them. They weren't rated to hold pressure really. So there's a little bit of carbonation in them, like I don't know, 1.5 volumes. And they were really breathing. They were probably saturated in air, and which is not under pressure, granted, but there's a lot of air, at least by today's standards, modern brewing practices. A brewer would get a heart attack if there is, 8,000 parts per million of oxygen in his beer. If it's about 20 parts per billion, they would be really upset because it's very bad for shelf life. But in the old days, they just had these open casks. And so there was a lot of air. I mean, if you got
oxygen.
Yeah. And a lot more nitrogen, because in air, for every molecule of oxygen, there's like almost 4 molecules of nitrogen coming along for the ride, right? And so these so-called traditional cask style beers, number one, had good body, and number two, they had a lot of nitrogen already dissolved in it, not intentionally, but it was there. And I think when Guinness tried to actually put a modern process for it back in the 70s, they were trying to replicate a cask kind of, this nostalgic style that people wanted is what they were trying to produce in a modern way, without adding as much oxygen and, still get the effect.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah. And then you tinker along and say, hey, if I put more, what happens? Oh, wow, it looks even better.
Yep.
And so on,
Yep. No,
My theory, anyway. But
that perfectly makes sense.
Mhm.
And I could see that even happening prior to the 70s. You said Guinness tried to do this, but I could see that even happening, as the old generation ages, they say, things have changed. I want this old product that I am accustomed to and preferred. So they may have even tried at that point, and thus it carried on from there.
Yeah.
Make something similar.
Someone should write a book on
Yeah.
the history of beer, the history of brewing. If it hasn't been already, maybe Murthy, that's like your next project. What do you think?
There you go.
No,
Writing a book.
No.
I have quite a bit of ADD, and but there's better people who have already
So
done
does
a lot of
Dan.
writing.
That's not an excuse. So does Dan. He wrote a book. So
Oh, sorry, Dan, I wasn't aware. What did you write about?
Well, with Chris, we wrote a book on clinical research.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the comprehensive guide to clinical research, shameless plug, but if we can do it, anyone can do it. So it's a book that needs to be
Nice.
written, I think. This one on beer. There's a lot of history there. I was also thinking to write a book on caffeine, because if you think about caffeine, and we're gonna play a game right now too, so we're almost done, Murthy. Thank you for being patient. If you think about caffeine, caffeine is some interesting shit, because caffeine, prior to caffeine, like they were drinking it in Asia with tea long before the Europeans did. They were drinking it in Iraq, Latin America, when it was the Indians there. But it didn't get introduced to Europeans until like around the 1600s. So it's a relatively new thing. And then what happened immediately after? The Renaissance. Like everybody woke up and started thinking about crazy stuff. Like, oh, well, no, it shouldn't be like this. The world is not the center of the universe. Like caffeine, you can make the argument, inspired like Western civilization. I don't think it gets enough credit, in my opinion. Someone should write a book, like a deep dive into caffeine, coffee, tea, just go full on nerd in depth. I think it would be a bestseller.
Yeah, I don't know about specifically caffeine, but I can't get moving in the morning without my coffee.
Me either. It's a drug. It's the
No.
most powerful drug in
Yeah.
humankind, I think.
Yeah.
both me and my stomach can't move.
Chris, we play again. Well, Murthy, is there anything else you wanted to add? We'll have to have you on again, man.
When you write that book, we're bringing you back.
Oh man, the book. Which one? The beer or the caffeine one?
The beer.
The beer, yeah.
I think you're going a little far on caffeine and giving it credit. The Renaissance due to caffeine.
Correlation or causation, you be the judge, but you have to buy the book to figure it out.
There you go. Good selling point.
Yeah. Murthy, anything left for you to say? How could people get? We'll have a link underneath. What's the website?
It's nitrobrew.com,
Amazing domain.
NitroBrew, just like it is. And yeah, I would love to. Uh, what I like is people who are not used to, a certain beer. Like, for instance, my wife doesn't care for beer like Chris.
That's
Mm.
right.
And it
Chris is like a
seems like,
female in this regard. Yeah.
no, what I mean,
Yeah,
they,
nothing wrong with that. Not an insult.
I think she hates the carbonation.
Mm.
And, but on Nitro, the kettle system you have, for instance, it does reduce the carbonation down to what is typical for a Nitro style beer. You can get standard commercial beer, which has like 2.5 volumes of carbonation. Put it in there and infuse the nitrogen and dispense. It'll come out at 1.25 volumes of carbonation. And of course, a lot of nitrogen that gives you that crema and a very smooth drinking experience. So yeah, people who are not normally beer drinkers, or root beer too, it does
Guys,
make it a little sweeter, but
take it from me.
it's
I like things to work outside the box. I don't like to tinker too much. Once I learn something, I like to mess with it. But like when I just want my coffee to taste good in the morning, when I first got this gift, I was like, oh, this looks like it was a little bit intimidating. And then I went online, I'm like, oh, it's simple enough. And in like one drink I learned the hardest part's screwing on the lid properly. So you don't get leaky like when you put it
Mhm.
in the gas and shake it. But once you figure that out, guys, this is like gonna change everything about what you're drinking, whether it's coffee, beer, like Murthy said, anything else, you can get creative with this craft soda, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. It's a pretty versatile thing that's useful for many things besides just a simple nitro coffee, which
Hmm.
on its own is
And you're gonna impress the
great.
hell out of your friends or family when they come over. They're gonna think you're like
Yeah,
a chemist. I have my setup in my garage. My in-laws come over, they're like, oh, Dan's in there, messing with, look at all this stuff. It looks like so complicated, but it's so simple. So
yeah,
you'll impress your friends and family too. It's kind of cool. But thank
Yeah.
you so much for coming on. Look, we really appreciate it. NitroBrew.com. You guys go watch the full interview. This is an entrepreneur who brings fun back to your beverages with coffee, beer, soda, whatever it is, tea. I mean, go watch the video because it's like you can get creative with it as well, and you'll come across really cool to your friends. The link is underneath this video. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for watching, everybody. And
yeah.
Murthy,
Thank
thank
you
you
very
for
much
being
for
here.
having me.
Thank you, Murthy.
Thank you.